The central training target during the competition phase is preparing the athlete for competition by further increasing strength and power via additional increases in training intensity while simultaneously decreasing training volume. Now, this process can be a delicate balancing act, as adequate volume and intensity of training are needed in order to maintain a competitive preparedness, and reductions in volume, intensity, or both are needed to optimize performance. Now, the competition phase may last for only 1 to 2 weeks for some sports in which a peaking program would then be employed. So the peaking programs attempt to place the athlete in peak condition for about 1 to 2 weeks. And peaking programs result in a progressive shift from higher intensity training toward lower intensity training designed to reduce fatigue as the athlete moves through the taper before competition. So for peaking, athletes would use something like very high to low intensity, maybe ranging from 50 to about 90 to 95% of one's 1RM, and very low volume. This may consist of 1 to 3 sets of only 1 to 3 reps per set. For team sports, this period spans an entire season and may last for many months, requiring the use of a maintenance program. Now, because of the prolonged duration of the competition period in this situation, the intensity and volume of training must be manipulated on a microcycle basis in order to maintain strength and power while managing the fatigue associated with a frequent competition schedule. Generally, a maintenance program is marked by moderate to high intensity training. You see here that's classified or characterized as 85 to 93% of 1RM with low to moderate volumes, consisting of about 2 to 5 sets and 3 to 6 reps per set. Between the competition season and the next macrocycle's preparation period is the second transition phase. Now, the second transition, also known as the active rest phase, provides a period of time in which athletes can rehabilitate injuries and refresh both mentally as well as physically before beginning a new annual training plan or macrocycle. It is generally recommended that this phase lasts no longer than 4 weeks unless an athlete requires additional time to recover from an injury. So, much like we talked about in the first transition leading up to the competition phase, during the second transition, we may use something like an unloading week or unloading weeks between long periods of training to prepare the body for the subsequent training phase to come. And also, this is important in order to reduce the potential of overtraining to occur. So finally here, looking at the relationship of periodization phases or periods to sports seasons and the resistance training focus within that phase. We see here, starting with the annual training plan, in this example, that would be one macrocycle. And that macrocycle can be broken down into the preparation period, the competition period, and a transition period. And if we get more specific, we can break that down into the first and second transition period. And you can see the seasons typically associated with these various periods that make up the macrocycle. So within the preparation period of the off-season, focus may be on promoting or increasing hypertrophy strength endurance or basic strength. Again, trading off between intensity and volume depending on the specific phase. We see here the active rest leading into the more intense second transition period that typically occurs during an athlete's preseason. And then finally, we see within the preseason a trade-off between strength power phases and basic strength phases, again providing some variation for the athlete, trading off between high intensity, moderate to high volume resistance training with low to very high intensity, low volume resistance training. And then finally, For this specific example, the in-season would consist of a maintenance phase, again, because the primary focus during the in-season is actual athletic competition. And then finally, the second transition period occurring during the athlete's postseason after competitions have concluded would include active rest. So that would not be complete rest, but a reduction in intensity and volume are characteristic of active rest, thus allowing the athlete to rest both mentally as well as physically and rehabilitate any injuries prior to the next cycle's off-season. So in terms of some key points here, as we talked about, periodization is a process through which the athlete's training is logically and systematically organized in order to promote peak condition for the most important competitions. So we can think of periodization as planned manipulation of the acute program variables within the context of a single exercise session. We saw that the annual training plan is divided into larger macro cycles that contain the preparation, competition, and transition phases, with each one of these phases subdivided into mesocycles that target the development of hypertrophy or strength endurance, basic strength, or the development of strength and power. We cannot forget about the importance of transition phases or active rest, thus providing the athlete with an unloading period that enhances recovery. And it's also important to remember that the overall structure of the cycles that we discussed is dictated by the individual sports competition season as well as their demands.